Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack and Dave here, joined by another version of a Dave Harris on the Irish Hotspur here. We're joined by the cheese room version of the David Harris, and he's here to fix the crisis that is Tottenham Hotspur. And I imagine that he has maybe some takes we've either heard before or maybe we haven't heard before. That's the whole point of this sort of therapy session on this podcast. But Mr. Dave Harris, the other Dave Harris, I'll introduce you first. How are you?
I am very, very well. Thank you very much for having me on. It's great to be on this channel. Obviously, you guys have had the pleasure of your company on the Cheese Room quite a few times now. So it's great to be back on yours. So as I always say, I'm the Southern Hemisphere, David Harris, and Irish is obviously the Northern Hemisphere, David Harris, and that's how we both own the world.
Good to see both Harrises on either side of the hemisphere, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. You know, we're slowly starting to take over the world. The plan is to actually have one in every continent, so we're well on the way with that. But for the sake of this podcast, so it doesn't get confusing, you can just call me Irish today.
Okay, Mr. Irish, let's do it. We're going to get straight into the business here, everybody. If you're watching this back on YouTube, feel free to smash that like button. And everybody as well, get your comments in on all these questions that we're going to be discussing as well. The first question we have for you, Mr. Other Dave Harris, is Paratici's appeal to his worldwide ban is today. We are going to be hearing his appeal. Unlikely that it is actually going to be the case that they're going to get back to him right away, I think, on his appeal. But question marks have arisen over his influence in Spurs' important managerial search. Supposedly, Luis Enrique is his number one target, while Spurs have also been linked with Vincent Kompany, who's probably more admired, you would say, by the thfc board, aka Daniel Levy. Who do you think really is actually leading this managerial hunt?
I think that Mr. Levy is playing his options as per usual. I think that he's still holding on to the hope that Paratici gets out of this. So the appeal hearings today. So basically the body that it's been appealed to, they could turn around and say reject the findings, and then it goes back to it's back to Italian football, who lifts the ban, and then it has to go then to FIFA to lift the ban. So there's a bit of a way to go. But obviously, if they don't agree with the appeal and it's upheld, that's it. He's banned, and then I think that he'll be on his way. So I think he's playing his options, Mr. Levy, as per usual. So I think the thing with Kompany and what's interesting about him is that you've obviously got our new director of football operations, Scott Munn, who is from the City Group. You've obviously, and I did a bit of research, you've got this guy called Simon Davis, not the Welsh purse player who we enjoyed in the noughties. His title, I think, is head of coaching methodology. If you know what coaching methodology is, I'd be interested to know. And he's worked with Kompany at Anderlecht and at City. So as I would like to have done over the last 22 to 23 years, is try and get into that cranium, that brain of Mr. Daniel Levy and work out what he's currently thinking. And it's a theory that I think was put forward by the esteemed broadcaster Danny Kelly, in that maybe he's trying to replicate the City Group way of doing things and getting in people there. So Kompany's obviously City player, worked with Davis at Anderlecht. You got Scott Munn, whatever his name is. Is he looking to replicate City Group, but obviously without the money?
Is there anything wrong with trying to replicate the City Group actually sort of strategy? Because we, on the last pod, funny enough, we were talking about as this sort of being a potential solution that where Spurs would benefit from is if they want to show any type of identity or direction, Davo, is that they got to maybe model themselves like a Brighton, like a City Group, like a Red Bull Group, whatever it may be. And we actually thought it wouldn't be that surprising if actually Daniel Levy saw what the Red Bull Group do and what the City Group do and having all these investments in various clubs around the world. And then they have this incredible sort of like scouting network because of it and everything and so on. Like you said, I don't really expect him to spend nearly as much as probably they would to get that sort of network set up. But is there anything really actually wrong in the first place of him maybe trying to model Spurs off of a successful club like that or a successful group like that?
I think that if I look at the different models, look at Dortmund, for example, who got to where they are, in terms of kind of developing talent and get an interest in getting English talent going over there because they see the opportunity to develop their career, and then they're sold on for pretty big numbers. We're going to see that at Bellingham again this summer. That's quite a good model. I hate to say it, but I look at Liverpool, I look at Fenway, I look at Michael Edwards I look at Klopp, and it's all aligned, and it's all about you. To me, the model should be you've obviously got the head of they've got this football operations role, which is fine. Then you've got the director of football, then you've got the coach academy, and they're all aligned in the style of football they're going to play with adaptability, of course, and the kind of players that they want to scout and get in at the youth level, but also the kind of players they want to buy, and they fit in the model. Now, we're all nodding our heads here collectively because this is not all rocket science, but we haven't really seen much evidence of that in 20 odd years. I think if you line up Poch, Paul Mitchell, that's when it was singing well for a couple of seasons. But if he's looking at a model, I sometimes think that he's looking at Arteta and he's thinking, right, well, I'll get myself a young manager and we'll look to do it that way, because he thinks because he's gone with the Mourinho and the Conte, thinking, well, I'll just deal with the what's left of the Poch years, win a trophy, and all good.
Mr. Irish, what are your thoughts on any of that, and especially maybe the fact that the City Group, maybe Daniel Levy could be trying to model it sort of Spurs up of the City Group, but an important distinction is it's going to take a lot of investment and a lot of sort of forethought to build that type of network. It doesn't happen overnight. And then also, is maybe Daniel Levy more interested in a Vincent Kompany than maybe a Luis Enrique?
I think when you look at the reports that's been circling around now, look, I always take them with a pinch of salt, but it has the reports have sort of state that Daniel Levy is a big fan of Vincent Kompany, very impressed with what he's done this season, and then like you said, Paratici seems to want
Enrique.
So it's kind of like, they're talking about everyone being on the same page, but they can't even be on the same page on who they want in here as manager, which is a big problem. Look, I think it would make sense to bring in someone like Kompany. If you brought in a Scott Munn, if you've brought in, there's Simon Davies as head of coaching methodology. I mean, it does look like that's sort of the group they want to go out. But it's just like Tottenham to start putting something like that in place and bring someone else in rather than someone like a Vincent Kompany. For me, you look at someone like a Vincent Kompany, he can come in here. It's a long-term project. You start fresh. You know you're going to get a good brand of football. He already knows what it's like to work inside of a City Group, how it operates. So for me, it would make sense if that is the group, if that is the way the club do want to go down, then you bring in someone like a Vincent Kompany. You look at the City Groups, sort of, no matter where they've had the club, even the club they had in New York, they had Patrick Vieira in there as manager, and they've constantly been developing these sort of managers in world football with a future of actually taking over City once Guardiola's finished. They've got Patrick Vieira, they've got Arteta, they've got Vincent Kompany out there to choose from. So, like, not only are the City Group sort of, developing players, bringing clubs together and all, it does look like they're sort of developing managers for the future as well. But look, this is the problem. They need to get in line. They need to get in line with something at this football club. For me, it's the only person that can lead the manager hunt right now is Daniel Levy. Paratici's banned. His appeal is today, but you're not going to hear anything from that appeal for a week or so. It's only a hearing today. So for me, it's got to be Daniel Levy. And when you look at it, right, he went on holiday, and I think he was expecting, Paratici to be able to do the job. But obviously the ban came around. So it's only since he's been back from holiday we're seeing, we're going to start the interview process and stuff like that. So it's got to be Daniel Levy leading this manager search. Paratici can only advise. He can't do anything. So Scott Munn's not here till the summer. So there's only one man that it can't be, and it's got to be Daniel Levy right now.
if Daniel Levy went on that sort of holiday, right, I think that would explain what I'm thinking is, which I feel like Daniel Levy is kind of reluctant to maybe be taking on this managerial search. And that's because there's a lot of pressure on him right now. There are a lot of eyes on him right now. The spotlight is big on him right now. Via Talk Sport as well, Mr. Dave Harris as well. The spotlight is on him. And you would think then he's going to be he's going to be more nervous, more anxious over this decision. He knows that he's already had plenty of lives, or how would you put it? He's had plenty of tries, right? He's like he's a cat with 20 years of lives. He's a cat that has plenty of opportunities to try to get it right. And he's failed on multiple occasions to make the right footballing decision. But it feels like maybe now more than ever, actually, there are more eyes on him making this decision than before. So I feel like the reason why maybe part of this has been moving so slowly is not also because Spurs are an absolute dumpster fire right now. Who would really want to come here? But it is also, I think Daniel Levy is unsure whether he is going to actually have to be the guy to make the decision, because a guy like Paratici, he has brought in so that he could lean upon to make maybe those decisions for him, or kind of bring the person forward. Then he can kind of push through maybe the final kind of buttons and whatnot on the manager push. But it feels like if Paratici is basically destined to be banned and is basically destined to be a former employee of Spurs, I think Daniel Levy, with that in mind, is quite nervous about sort of what is going to unfold from there, because then he can't lean on Paratici. Apparently, we heard from Ali Gold as well that Paratici was one of the few people actually willing to kind of tell Daniel Levy when he was wrong about something, or when he was, maybe looking at something a bit differently. Paratici apparently had no issue with kind of challenging him. And I know Daniel Levy is not exactly the most humble person and probably doesn't like having too many people around him that challenge him. But in a time like this, I bet having a guy like Paratici certainly would help in picking the right manager, because you're getting a different opinion and you're getting a guy with football expertise that can help you in that regard. And I actually don't really mind all of the managers that we've been linked with, but where I am concerned, and where I think a lot of people are concerned, is it's not like the Liverpool situation where everybody's on the same hymn sheet. All the managers we're linked with, I think, look really good on paper, but they're all kind of different from each other. They all don't really exactly, there isn't exactly a huge Venn diagram that you could put together where they all sort of overlap. They definitely have plenty of differences. And still to this day, I feel like Spurs are sort of doing the scattergun approach, to the managers.
Here's the problem though, Jack. It's like, yeah, he may want to rely on Paratici to bring in the manager, but the reality is the last two managers the guy's brought in has been sacked. He wants to bring in sort of win now managers. That's what he's used to at the likes of Juve and stuff like that. And he wants to replicate that here, but we don't want to. We don't want to put the money up front to rectify all the problems to go along with that sort of approach. So it's kind of like, yeah, he may be sitting back looking for Paratici, but the reality is he sacked Paratici's last two managers, and they haven't. What I would say is, like, especially on the Conte's case, continue to back him. Right? We all know that defense is a huge issue, but rather than go, look, we've got the right manager, we're keeping him, we're going to, get in them centre backs and stuff he needs this summer because it's been a long outstanding issue before you've got here. They go, no, it's not working, we'll sack him, and it's kind of like, it goes back to the disconnect that Dave's talking about. Like, surely when they brought Conte in here, they knew that system needs centre-backs. They do everything else but centre-backs and then sack them. And it's kind of like Paratici and Levy aren't even on the same page. And to get this whole ship back on track, they have to be on the same page. They have to have some joint-up sort of thinking, because I think the reality is a lot of people are expecting Scott Munn to come in and be that guy. Scott Munn's not going to be that guy. Scott Munn is going to, he's more of a money guy, charged to bring extra sporting events here, this, that, and the other. He's not your guy that's going to fix all your problems. They're relying on Paratici to do it. But somewhere along the line, Paratici and Levy have to get on board. Paratici has to say, look, this is my way of doing things. You've got to put the funds up. It's that simple.
I mean, I think Scott Munn, I think his role is I think is on the football side. I mean, I think the title's Director of Football Operations, because he's got the role is Paratici reports into him, right? Mm-hmm. Then you've got this Todd Klein guy who's he's good with the go-karts and the Beyonce, and hopefully will bring us the naming rights after 4 years after the stadium's open. and he's been in place for 2 years. So I think the Scott Munn guy, he is his background. I mean, he's from Melbourne, but don't let that put you off. I'm in Sydney, and he is. His background is that he was on the organising committee of the 2000 Olympics. By all means, I think it went very well. So there you go.
Bob's staying at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium next year.
You heard it first. I was on a Spaces this morning. What we were talking about is, Chelsea have got a nightclub. Surely it's time for us to have a nightclub. And what would you call the nightclub? That would be very interesting. But I think that the way it's meant to work is Scott Munn is in charge of the whole the football operations. So Paratici reports into him, and that's how it works. And I think just back to Kompany for a second, and just a little plug. But Franco on the Cheese Room pod after the Bournemouth debacle, or the latest one, he made a very good point about Kompany. Is that I think he had 2 seasons at Anderlecht, and this is his season at Burnley. And the kind of theory is they want to get another Poch, but not Poch, right? And you look at the experience that Poch had. I mean, he had 1 or 2 seasons at Espanyol. He was at an Argentinian club as well. Was it Newell Old Boys, or did he play for them? And then he was at Southampton for about 1.5 years, which I think is a lot more experience coming into it than what Kompany has. And so you're running the risk. Obviously Arteta was, the coach at City, and he's coming. That's his first managerial job. So it could go Arteta, I hate to say it, or it could go Stevie Gerrard, or look at the great job Frank Lampard's doing again at Chelsea.
I agree with what you're saying with Kompany, how it is a risk, in the fact that I feel like he's only been around for so long, and there's only so much time that has passed for him to achieve or prove so much. Like, it's, I think, all credit to him. I think he's actually done as best as a guy could do in the short span of time he's been a manager. But that's what maybe the key point is: a short span of time he's been a manager. So you would still think there's still plenty of him to learn. He's showing good, like, maybe signs, right? He's showing good positive signs for somebody definitely to give him a chance. But are Spurs really the one to give him that chance? Because he's only been around for so long. Is he even had any sort of type of notion to be able to take on like a mess like ours? Because not only is it a big club where a lot more attention is going to be drawn to you, it's also a big of a mess. It's certainly going to be a difficult one. I get what he has done at Burnley has been spectacular. In fact, what he's done at Burnley is probably the best you could probably do in the short space of time he's been there. And he's probably impressing a lot of people because, in a way, he kind of changed the ethos, or the culture, at least, of how the club plays, and how maybe people saw the game, and how the style of play, and just sort of a lot of elements of that club he changed in the space of very short. So I feel like maybe that's what Levy sees Kompany as, right? Is a short-term solution. He does like those short-term solutions now. And maybe Kompany is a guy, while also posing as a long-term guy, because he's young and has a lot to learn. He's also maybe somebody that he's seen turn a club around in the space of a year, only just recently. And then I bet a bit of recency bias is probably falling into it as well. But I feel like, what do you think, Jan, on what you said there?
Quickly, we might not have an option. We might have to go down the Kompany route. Now, I've said this for a long time. You sack Jose the way you do. You get rid of Conte the way you do. You sack Pochettino the way you do. 3 of the best 5 managers in the world. Yeah. You're developing a quick reputation. You look at it now, right? If we hadn't done what we've done over the last few years, you'd have an Englishman in the door right now. You'd have an Enrique in the door right now. But because of the way we treat managers, and a problem is glaring in the office, it's only now everyone's talking about it, but I've been on about it for 2 years, is that backline. And our board have a history of backing that backline instead of the manager, right? So it's kind of like, we might not have an option. You look at it now. Nagelsmann and Enrique already been interviewed by Chelsea, and they're sacking their manager a week after us. Real Madrid job is coming up in the summer. We could be put in a position where a lot of these guys, you look at Pochettino, but apparently we haven't contacted him, but there's also been reports that he's waiting for the Real Madrid job. So we could be well in a position where we may not even get first, second, or third choice, and I've no doubt other teams will probably join the managerial hunt somewhere along the line between the end of the season and the summer as well. So we might actually be forced to go down a project route. You look at that after Jose Mourinho, they wanted a top manager in here. Conte was available, but he wouldn't come because of the perception of Tottenham Hotspur at the time. So we ended up bringing in someone like Nuno. And then eventually Conte goes, okay, you know, I'll take the job. I'll come in and see what I can do. But like, you know, we've got to be careful here, you know. And like this is what I've been fearful of a long time. The way we treat managers, you know, it's going to get to a point where you're going to get up and coming managers who look at Tottenham Hotspur and go, way too much of a big job there, way too much of a gamble. I'll sit and I'll take the next safe option because my career's on an upward trajectory. Touching Tottenham, that could curtail it. You've got world-class managers who, I'm of the opinion now, ain't going to touch Tottenham. Yeah, they might get the money, but their job, they're going to be leaving here looking like dinosaurs. We've done it to Jose. We've done it to Conte. Dinosaurs, too old, finished, this, that, and the other. Yeah. And that's the perception. They come in here with this reputation, and they leave washed up, ready to retire. And it's not the case. It's just the way Tottenham make them look. So we might actually have no option but to go down the route of a company.
What do you think, Dave Harris? Do you feel like Spurs have become the safety school? I'm not sure if anybody you know is applying to universities yet, but maybe Spurs have become the safety school to pick from for managers.
I mean, it's interesting to say it because I was trying to work it out now. So Poch went November 2019.
Yeah.
And with your interim Masons, Stellini's, and this, that, and the other, and whoever we appoint next, would that make it the 6th person in charge in 4 years, something like that, right?
Dave, I came up with a stat a few weeks ago, and I've seen everybody use it since. But we haven't had one manager in charge in the dugout for a full season since Mauricio Pochettino.
If it weren't for
Watford, I saw that.
If it weren't for Watford, we would be Watford.
I saw that. I mean, it's interesting that. I mean, I was just before we were coming on, I was just having a read about an article on Abramovich and where he's got his money from in Guardian Online. It's quite interesting, and I haven't finished it yet. But I think that, you know, before your guys' time back in the day, way back in my day, it was a question of English managers or English teams. We kept managers for 2, 3, 4 years. Everyone talks about Fergie and all the rest of it. And then you look at the continent, particularly Italy, like they sack 2 or 3 managers a season, this, that, and the other. But transform that now, I'm kind of the view that going back to Abramovich in a way has almost made the kind of the coach or the first team, the manager job, almost kind of he's lowered it in the priority in the food chain at Chelsea, because you look at the number of the churn rate that they've got through, right? And they've still had the success they had. Now, you may argue, I mean, particularly Ancelotti, I think getting rid of him after 2 seasons has turned out to be a massive mistake, right? And they could have won even more. And I know the money, etc., etc. But I do think that from a manager's point of view, going into Tottenham now, imagine it if you are the first manager that even brings home the three-handled cup, the League Cup, the first trophy since 2008. Imagine if you do that. That's going to look bloody good on your CV. And invariably, as we all know, when you go into a manager job, you know, unlike your Fergie when he retired, you are inheriting a shit show, which is why the change has been made, right? Now, we are an absolute shit show at the moment. We all know that. But this has been ongoing now for quite a few years. We know the reasons why. And I think that, you know, in terms of kind of the managers that are out there and this, that, and the other, I actually want a manager. I'd actually want a Poch, but I don't want Poch, if you know what I mean. I want a we've got it
reincarnated.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if we're going to get onto who that I would like, I think that the kind of the profile of the manager that I would like.
Well, just quickly, maybe just to solve the question then, if whoever you want, we'll figure that out. But I mean, who's going to be making that decision for you then, Mr. Harris? Is it going to be Paratici that's making that decision, or is it Levy? Do you think that's eventually making that decision? I think it's going to be Levy.
That's what asked the Penguins in the Arctic.
Well, I think listen, I don't want Levy making a decision because he's got the footballing credibility of the stapler that's on my desk at the moment. He hasn't got a clue. He really doesn't. And I was being very and everyone can slag me off in comments or on Twitter or whatever, and I was being very naive thinking the other day that I didn't realize that the main board also made footballing decisions about the women's team and women's football, because I think they know absolutely nothing about the men's football and football in general. But then they're now making decisions around the women's team, and I'm like, I honestly thought that was a separate kind of board or management structure with people of experts in that area. Little did I realise I'm being naive there. So who is going to make the decision? As I said, I think Levy's playing his options. This appeal turns out that Paratici's got to go, and probably from a contractual point of view, he's got the right to terminate. Then that's what he's going to do. I would like to think that he's done a little bit of forward planning, but we know that's not the case. And spoken to our man from Melbourne to say, well, if Paratici goes, who do you want as director of football? Who do you think? And we started doing some kind of search and discussion now as a backup plan. But that's me being sensible and living on planet Earth. And we know that the board don't do that.
And what would be your manager of dreams then?
My manager of dreams. Whoa.
Who's your Poch reincarnated?
Well, I think I'm on the pragmatism. So I look at someone like Thomas Frank, right? So I'm kind of lining up the Poch equivalents. Do you know what I mean? So he's got Brentford 2 seasons in the Premier League. I thought they'd be in trouble without Eriksen this season. They've actually done better. He develops play. Maybe he's a little bit direct in the style of play, but apparently, very good man manager, very good with the fans, and he can adapt his and apparently he makes substitutions before the 75th minute and not bring on Lucas Moura, so that would be a good thing. And so someone like him, it's not sexy, it's not glamorous, but it's kind of like him. It's the guy at Feyenoord, possibly. The key is, and I know we're going to get onto this in a bit, is kind of bringing in the manager who we've got the players that we've got. We've got now a plethora of wing backs. We've got fullbacks out on loan. It's going to be sorting through all that and working out what he needs. So my view is someone who's going to, so to sum it up, so your Franks or your De Zerbis even, or the slot at Feyenoord who can come in, has a reputation for developing, improving young players, playing attractive football. And to my mind, psychologically now as a supporter, what I'd like to see is I know I'm dreaming, a clear plan in place. Next season, we play attractive football. We see that. And we may pick up a domestic trophy, but we can see players improving and the young players coming in and things like that. And as a fan base, we're going to have to be patient again.
Now I think you're getting off the space of Earth again. No, I'm just kidding.
Patience and fans don't go together. Be patient for too long. But just quickly on the women's football as well. I've no doubt Scott Munn has been brought in for that. He's got extensive knowledge of building that up over in Australia. And with the women's game sort of
that's good. Getting
the coverage it's getting and stuff like that. And you would only think that that's going to go in one way in terms of, profile and money generating and stuff. I've no doubt that Tottenham brought this guy in to also try and get ahead on that as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Good research there, Dave, on that. Just quickly, as a follow-up question to you, Irish, is using Chelsea as a gauge or like some sort of kind of comparison, in this case, because they only just sacked Graham Potter. We sacked Conte actually before they even sacked Graham Potter. Let's say they find a new manager before us. I know it is Chelsea versus Spurs, and you do sometimes have to take that occasionally with a pinch of salt when comparing the two because they operate just in entirely different worlds. But what do you think? Like, is it worth comparing if they were to, let's say, get the signature of a Nagelsmann or an Enrique before we even have made it even clear at all who our next manager is?
Well, I think it'd be naive to say you can't compare the two, to be honest, chap, because that's who you're competing with. Most pundits are sitting there saying, look, Chelsea, Tottenham looking for a manager. Chelsea, take your pick. You get who you want. Tottenham, second choice. I think it's only right and it's only fair you compare it to them. Look, it's not like the old Chelsea we're comparing ourselves to. It's this new brand, this new Chelsea. Now, this guy, Todd Bowley, he sacked everyone else around him. But he still has the nous to get onto the manager interview process quicker than what Tottenham does, and it's not good enough. Like a club like Tottenham, we need to be acting smarter and faster. We know if Chelsea are in the market for a manager, that managers are going to go there. Even now, under Todd Bowley, they're still going to go there because they're looking at it and go, okay, right, well, if I go to Tottenham, I need areas of the squad fixed. What sort of players are Tottenham going to bring me in? Whereas if they look at the Chelsea job and go, okay, I need a striker. I guarantee your man's going to bring in one of the best strikers around world football. And that's the difference. They know at Chelsea they'll get back, even though they Dave was saying, they have a history of only lasting 1 to 2 years. When you're bringing in world-class player after world-class player, you can have that audacity. You can say, look, I've got best players from across the world here. You're sacked, I'll get in the next guy. We can't do that at Tottenham because, we never come out of a transfer window with all the holes plugged to give a manager a fair chance of something to do here. And I'm not doing, I sort of feel like it's unfair. We sack managers at times when you look at some of the shit that they have to deal with, some of the shit they're forced to pick. But anyone that says, oh, you can't compare the two, I think it's naive. You got to compare the two. They're the two clubs in English football at the top of the table looking for managers. Of course you can compare it. The whole narrative has been a Todd Bowley. He hasn't a clue what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. Okay. Well, then, what does that say about us? They started the interview process. They've interviewed Enrique. They've interviewed Nagelsmann. So if this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and we got a guy in charge that's been in football, by the way, longer than the Tottenham, longer than 22 years. He's been at Rangers. They had a team in Greece and stuff like that. Yeah, they had Slavia Prague as well. I mean, if that guy doesn't know what he's doing, he's already ahead of it. What does that say about us? It doesn't look good.
If you were to assign Spurs like a credit score for like the trust for managers and whatnot, it certainly would not be like the credit in the bank that Chelsea at the end of the day have and the rapport that they have with managers. Yes, the rapport is like, we're going to be ruthless to you the moment that the results start slipping. But at the same time we're going to stuff your face with everything you possibly need in order to be successful. And so that's why you would say, even if it starts to slip, even though Chelsea look a bit uncertain right now, it's like they have that credit in the bank from like years in the past of success that still would probably give a manager probably less reason to be skeptical. Whereas Spurs, it's like looking at a really bad credit score, I imagine, like thinking like, I don't know if I really want to get a business with these guys.
And I just want to add quickly as well before we let Dave win. I know we had a conversation last night, and Sav and Sim were sort of like, well, what can we offer them, this, that, and the other. I get that, right? I get that. But last manager search we had for Nuno, it took 72 days. We're already 3 weeks into that 72 days, right? It's like, are we looking to maybe beat that and go into the Guinness Book of World Records at this point? Who knows? But, not only did you have the 72 days for the last managerial search, but it's like, you like, what can you offer them now? Who wants to come in right now? But you wait till the summer. Who knows what clubs are going to be in the manager? And then, it's a dangerous game. For me, with our business model, the way we operate, we have to be smarter and faster than everybody else.
Yeah. Shall I give you the next question of the podcast, Mr. Davo? This is our listener's question from Magic Glades. I'm going to bring it up on screen, and hopefully she understands that we got to take a while to get to these, but I'm actually glad that she gave me this one. Thank you very much, Mag. And she says here, hey, I follow your YouTube channel. Great channel. Thank you very much. Whenever you get the chance, can you and Dave discuss how the summer window is going to work without a manager? Are we just going to coast without any strategy at all and hope we get it right? LOL, the things that worry me. I thought maybe you would appreciate this question, actually, Davo. But what are your thoughts on this listener's question here? How do you see the summer going? Is it just going to be kind of throwing darts at a dartboard, kind of with a blindfold on?
Well, that's the same as every summer, isn't it? So we're going to be. I'm only recently on Twitter. I've only just joined in January. Twitter's been going a lot longer in terms of my participation. But I do love the. We're monitoring. I love the lines of Tottenham are monitoring the situation. Tottenham have been asked to be informed of the developments.
Preparing to contact.
Yes. Can you? You call my team, I'll call your team. Let's do lunch, kind of thing, right? So how's the summer window going to work without a manager? Well, obviously, what we should do. Scott's in July 1, but he's on gardening leave, so he can do stuff while he's on gardening leave. Everyone does that. Paratici is let off, and we're all good. or Paratici is out the door, and therefore we've got to get a new director of whatever he is, director of football, and then we've obviously got the coaching. So I would rather see quick, smart, once the season's over, all these pieces of businesses are done, everyone's in situ, and off we go. Nuno started, his first day was quite literally the week where the training cones were being put out for pre-season training. So let's not forget with Nuno, everyone turned us down, and Paratici didn't want Zorro. What was his name? Fonseca. Yeah, and he wanted Gattuso, and there was an uproar. And then he went with Nuno. And that's where we got to. And then we started buying players after that. So it's every, how's it going to work without a manager? So, you see the usual stuff. We're linked with Maddison. We're obviously working with Eric Dyer on a new deal, which, I think that they will announce that similar to the way that Conte's sacking was announced, like at 11:58 on a Sunday night. And that's how it's going to work. As I said before, in the normal world, with everyone's in place, everyone's aligned, and off we go. So how's it going to work? Are we going to coast without any strategy? I don't think we're going to coast. I think we're going to drift.
Drift aimlessly. Maybe paddle our way, hopefully.
Yeah.
But maybe paddling is actually being kind, because that would mean some sort of direction. But Spurs, though, are working on an Eric Dyer deal. Does that really that? I think is exhibit A of the fact that actually Daniel Levy, etc. people are working behind the scenes. And what I kind of get concerned about all of this, both of you, is that there's really no reason to be doing any of this at a time. No one's asking for an Eric Dyer contract. You're not seeing people underneath any of the Twitter posts or Instagram posts asking for Eric Dyer to renew his deal. There's no manager here yet. There's no new manager that's come in and asking for Eric Dyer's future to be certain and guaranteed. There's no director of football that's making the decision. Paratici has plenty of other things on his mind, I imagine, before he's thinking about Eric Dyer's contract renewal. So if anything, there's only one guy really that we can think of that is pushing for this so-called Eric Dyer contract renewal. One of them obviously being Eric Dyer, but the other one being Daniel Levy. And this is where it's just like, what's the push here? What's the rush? Because you don't even have anybody really in charge at the moment. Like you said, Scott Munn technically can be doing things, but not in actually any real official capacity, like he's able to roll into the Tottenham Hotspur way. But this is where I just get concerned mostly. It's just the fact that someone like, I would say, a Daniel Levy is making moves right now when there's really no reason to be making moves whatsoever. There's practically nobody there that's checking him or keeping him, in check, or asking him what his thought or process or any logic is behind the decisions he's making. He's basically just, like I said before, maybe just throwing darts at the dartboard, but no one's even telling him where to throw them right now. And that's where I get really concerned.
Do you know what, though, Jack? First of all, we probably need a director of planning, so I put my hands up for that job. Or director of preparing, especially for the summer transfer window. I'll be that guy. But look, I was thinking about this. When it comes to a Dyer contract, I need someone to make it make sense. I need someone to make it make sense to me. This is a guy that literally assisted Mo Salah. Header right into his path, ran off Callum Wilson against Newcastle. He's cost us goal after goal this season, which in turn sort of led to Conte's outburst because of shit like that. But we sacked the manager and we reward this guy. It's absolutely unbelievable. The optics aren't great, are they? Reward the players that get the manager sacked, but sack the managers that you brought in to try and sort this situation out. It's absolutely crazy. How can you reward this guy, for mistake after mistake after mistake? And he's also a massive problem why we've had the manager turnover we've had, because none of them have been able to get this guy to perform properly. And, everyone goes, oh, well, it's their job to get them to perform. And it's like, yeah, no, but he can't. That's the problem. He can't. But we're going to keep blaming managers, and we're just going to reward Airhead with a new contract for no reason whatsoever. But back to what Magic did, the question Magic put in. Look, for me, a smart club, a club with an idea, you look at that back line. Be in the market already. You go and sign the right quality manager. No matter player, no manager's going to say, I can't work with that guy. The thing is, You've already got problem areas in the squad that, yes, the new manager's going to want to come in and he's going to want them to be addressed. And I don't want to hear anyone say to me, oh, he doesn't want defenders. I don't want to hear it. They want defenders. We're just not bringing them in the door because of the price that you have to pay for them nowadays. But there's no reason why someone in this club can't already be working on getting in good centre-back targets, lining up their goalkeeper target. Yes, even without Paratici, even without a manager, because if you buy the right quality player, they'll work under any system.
James Maddison.
What we can't do is buy cheap and then expect the new manager to come in and work with it and expect them to be happy. You buy the right quality, they can play in any system.
James Maddison, I feel like, versus the Eric Dyer situation, is something everybody would get behind. Like, all Spurs fans would be happy to see James Maddison come through the door. But Davo, this is, again, like, what if the new manager comes in and happens to not be a big James Maddison fan all of a sudden? Like, it's similar to it's like a better Jed Spence signing it could turn into, where it's like a club signing, but everybody can get behind. But then all of a sudden, what if it turns out that actually the manager we hire isn't exactly the biggest James Maddison fan, or doesn't really play him in the position that we think gets the best out of him, etc. Those things are still a possibility, and because we don't trust them to really make the right decision in that regard. So I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because Eric Dyer is a classic example of, wow, they're just shooting shots that don't need to be shot. But the James Maddison one is like a confusing one, because I would love to see him through the door, but at the same time, it could be a mistake.
Like, just quickly on Dyer, I don't know how many years has he got left on his contract. Is it 2 years?
I believe it's 2024. He might be like Sanchez, or 2025. Yeah, it might be
right.
next season.
Okay. So the reality is, Levy, and apart from Kane, which will no doubt we'll all talk about all the time, probably he doesn't like most people, doesn't like people getting into the last year of the contract. I mean, you know, Ericsson, Dembele, he's not done well on managing those situations, and so he's looked at it. And obviously, there's going to be massive suitors knocking down the door for Dyer. You know, Madrid, Barcelona, all the top ones, and basically, you know, so it's a question of economics of him. I mean, I said last summer, to be fair, I said that we upgrade on Davis in that window, so we get that left-footed centre back that we need, a top one, and gives Davis competition, and then Davis becomes a squad member, and that's what we should do. And then this summer we addressed the Dyer issue. So I've done one window and one summer window, which is this one. And then you get Clement Longley in, which I know there are some people who think he looks assured and good on the ball. I just think he's a cast off from a rubbish Barcelona team and was very meh about him when we signed him, right? And so that's where we are. But the optics and even the leaks and whatever it is, and maybe it's Dyer's agent working, maybe Dyer's agent trying to drum up some business for his client. You know, Dyer turns down that lucrative contract with his own personal go-kart, and he could be out the door this summer, right? So he's trying to maybe create a buyer's market, but it's not good optics, because then everyone goes, well, why haven't you sorted out Harry Kane's contract? And you're looking at Eric Dyer. So
supposedly Eric Dyer is more of a priority, I guess.
Yeah, but he is, of course. But so we asked about Maddison. Look, I really like Maddison. He is a typical Tottenham player in terms of flair, skill, little bit of inconsistency. So some of the greats over the years, they were inconsistent. And I think that, but he's someone who'd excite the fan base. The question really is, and then probably will go down, may go down. You know, Levy loves a good fire sale. We all know that. But where would Maddison go? What is, you know, he could go to Newcastle. Liverpool may want him. Can't see him at City. Chelsea, who knows with that lot. So he might have better choices to go to. There's another James, Ward-Prowse, where all the talk is if they go down, which is very likely, that we could get him in. And that my view is at the moment with Bentancur and planning, that P word again, planning for next season. I think we plan next season where anything we get out of Bentancur is a bonus. And I love him. Don't get me wrong. I think he's probably one of our best signings in the recent years. Not hard, I know. Great player, but is he going to come back as he was, and when he's going to come back? And you have to plan without him and get him. Whatever you get out of him next season is the bonus, right? And I think I'd want an upgrade there in terms of what we've got there. But
That's an interesting thought.
I mean, you guys are very good on the stats, and I would doff my hat to you guys on that, metaphorically, of course, because I'm not wearing one. Is James Ward-Prowse Harry Winks with a decent free kick?
Oh, I actually have made the bold claim once that, and everybody, I mean, feel free to slate me in this. Might as well just clip it now and put this in the trailer or something. But James Ward-Prowse, I actually have said once before, I actually think I only got to see the LA Galaxy version, really, of David Beckham. And I would say James Ward-Prowse, in my book, is a better free kick taker than David Beckham was. Probably David Beckham has even more technical skill and prowess than James Ward-Prowse could ever even imagine. But when it comes to a guy standing over a dead ball 3-4 yards out of the penalty area, I kind of feel like James Ward-Prowse is the guy that I would pick for that spot. He is deadly. He is absolutely ruthless and deadly. And when, to my recollection, I could be wrong, but I feel like James Ward-Prowse has already like destroyed Beckham's record or something for the Premier League, free kick goal record. And he's going to smash it and double it at this rate. So I actually think he might go down as practically one of the best set piece takers of all time. And when you look at it in that sort of regard, I think you will always be seen as somebody who it maybe is only good at one thing. And I actually think he's good at a lot of things, but he's just not necessarily world class at anything but I think his set piece taking and his free kicks. I think he is a world class set piece taker and world class delivery from those areas. Everything else, I think he's pretty high standard Premier League, but I think that's where it gets a bit weird. It's like he's super stacked in one area. And then I think the rest of his game is actually quite good and quite solid, but it just gets sort of a bit confused with one area that obviously stands out above the rest.
When you look at our midfield right now, what's missing? Someone that can break the lines with a pass, someone that's got a good passing range. You know, God knows we haven't had a free kick taker since Christian Eriksen, and even then he used to piss me off. I didn't think he was as good as everybody thought he was on the free kicks either. So for me, I think when you look at someone like a James Ward-Prowse, does he offer more than Skip? Yes. Does he offer more than Sarr? Right now, yes. Does he offer more than Højbjerg? I would say yes. So it's kind of like on that basis for me, I would bring the guy in. You got to remember, he's Southampton captain. You don't get captain if you're not a leader as well. So, well, actually, you do. Look at Hugo Lloris, but that's not them. But James Ward-Prowse obviously has a bit more about him. And for me, we need to get some of the. We need to sort out our English quota. It's absolutely killing us. We've got some of the worst English players I've ever seen in my lifetime. So for me, you've got to sort that out. You've got to bring in better homegrown qualities that meet players that meet that quota. So for me, someone like a James Ward-Prowse, perfect. I would argue that I probably would rather a Ward-Prowse over James Maddison. Look, I like Maddison. I think he's a good footballer, but do I think he's as good as everyone says he is? No, I don't think he is as good as everyone says he is. Don't get me wrong, I can see the benefits of having a Maddison in here. He's got sort of a good passing range, good long range shot. He's also good on free kicks and corners and stuff like that. But, I just think James Ward-Prowse has a bit more about him. You've got to question. Maddison has been linked for quite some time to move away from Leicester. Why has that move not materialised? Why do England constantly overlook the guy? For me, I think it is, from what I've been hearing, that James Maddison has an attitude problem, and we've seen what that step up can do along with the attitude problem. You feel like you've made it. I'm not sure we have an environment right now for someone like a James Maddison to sort of come in here, but I do think James Ward-Prowse could come in here and sort of improve maybe the environment a little.
Who would have thunk that James Ward-Prowse would be given so much praise? That wasn't on the script today. That wasn't on the run sheet.
No. How old is he now? Is he 28?
I think he's Højbjerg's age.
I think he's about that.
I think he's around Højbjerg's age, around 26, 25, maybe something around that age. I could be totally wrong. But, I mean, what I would say, though, lastly, and before I know we have to let Dave go, but some clubs maybe have the capacity, I feel like, to operate successfully and efficiently, regardless of who's in charge. But do you really trust Spurs to make the right squad management decisions without a manager's influence? So you see the likes of Brighton, Irish, right? They make a good decision. They see the likes of Dortmund brought up before. They make good decisions regardless of who's really in charge. But Spurs are not exactly the club that you can trust in that sense. So isn't this why maybe we should kind of just stay, kind of steadfast and wait till we actually do have a manager or a director of football in charge before we make these type of squad management decisions?
Fair point, but and I'm holding them to it. We were told we weren't signing centre backs in January because they were bringing in 2 this summer. So therefore, that should tell me that they've obviously got their targets that they want to go and get. So go and get them, regardless of a manager being here, regardless of Paratici. A good club with good planning will know what targets they want and what targets to bring in here. Look, the way football is going is the director of football sort of brings in the players, and regardless of the manager, they operate with what they've got. But when you look at clubs that mainly do that model, they're bringing the best players in the world, or they try to at least. Whereas at Tottenham, we don't do that, so it's not really sort of working out for us. But with how long it takes for us to get transfers, like you guys said to it earlier, and we were laughing at it, but it's sad that it's true. It's kind of like Tottenham considering over a bowl of cornflakes whether they're going to go for this guy. Tottenham, now discussing internally whether they want to go for this guy. Tottenham now having a vote whether they want to go for this guy. Tottenham now doing rock, paper, scissors. Winner decides whether we go for this guy. Tottenham now make contact with so-and-so. And it's like, no, just put in a bid. Forget all this other stuff. Just put in a bid. That's all that matters. So for me, I don't see why we can't operate. You can still address them areas, and then when the next manager comes in and he goes, I need a player in this position, I want this guy, you can go and do that. But right now, with how much centre backs cost, there's so many of them, where their contracts are coming up, should be working on it already. Same as a new long-term number one, because how quickly we turn over managers right now, you can't be signing managers for them or players for them managers, right? They're lasting 16, 18 months, if even.
Good point.
You can't sign players for them. So that tells me, if you're going to sign a number one, which we were told long-term replacement for Hugo Lloris, that's someone that's going to be here for the next 10 years. So you're signing that someone that's going to outlast your next managerial appointment.
Very good answer, actually.
So for me, it's kind of like, I don't see why they can't address the problem areas with the squad, get the manager in, and then bring in 1 or 2 players that he may need.
I actually really like Dave's answer there. But we just heard from Dave-O, that the other Dave, that perhaps Spurs, no matter what, should really basically be operating, without maybe the manager's guidance. I actually was saying that we should wait till the manager comes in to sort of give us some sort of direction. But he pointed out a lot of players outlast managers, and a lot of other clubs do make decisions without the manager's input or without even a manager there in charge in the first place. So is that a scary reality that we have to face, that we'll be making a decision without maybe other, managers' input?
Yeah, look, that is the reality of the situation now in modern football. I mean, if you look at the Paratici situation, which I know we've talked about, is the fact though that he did put an infrastructure in place. So you had the head of talent spotting at Everton brought in, which is a worry, isn't it? Stuyson. You had another guy brought in as well. We've talked about Simon Davis, which I think is a Paratici appointment as well. So he has put in an infrastructure in place to fill that big void left behind by your favourite Steve Hitchin in that circumstance. So the nature of the business is that you have continuity and you assume that that's the case. I think that, in terms of kind of the people that we can sign, it's interesting. We were talking before the show started about Vertonghen, because I'm pretty sure that Vertonghen was signed, and like within a week, Redknapp, it was announced that he was sacked. So it was like in that summer, Vertonghen came on board. They'd obviously targeted him and they wanted him in. I appreciate that wasn't with a director of football at the time. It was just, had Redknapp in place. And he signed on the dotted line. The question is, obviously, we always get down to it, is having Champions League football makes a difference or not. But, even the Gooners, they have made some big purchases and they haven't been in the Champions League for like 3, 4, 5 seasons. So, the reality is that and the same with United as well, they've been out a couple of seasons, 1 or 2, sporadically. So you can buy players and surprise, pay the asking price and surprise, pay the salary that's been asked and bring them in if you need to do that. Maybe free up a bit of that dire contract money, So it is possible, but it's going to require decent planning and logical thinking, which again, I come back to it. I'm not sure that's not in big supply and hasn't been for many years.
No. I also feel like maybe it's the case too that Spurs often rely on instantaneous fixes, and maybe they'll have to face the reality of you're not going to probably get all these decisions right, or even if the decisions you do make are the right decisions, they're not just going to get you in the right place overnight. Like you'll find yourselves in that still kind of limbo period, like you said, with Arsenal and Man United. Like that's still the case, and it's a good point you make there. And I actually also just at the end of maybe this sort of topic that I brought up there, I just feel a bit let down actually that, I am going to have to face the scary reality that Spurs are going to be making these sort of decisions regardless of who's manager or which influence we have from whoever's taking, kind of the control of the team, because it's kind of maybe an age old, or maybe something that I was taught probably, or at least what we're kind of hearing always from maybe pundits and whatnot, that you're always supposed to be buying players for the manager. The manager is always supposed to have his input on, the players that are brought in. But the way that other clubs seem to operate that are quite successful doesn't exactly seem to be the case. Like, yes, they might have an input on it, but they seem to be buying players, renewing contracts, doing all these sort of footballing decisions when there's a manager gone and they bring a new one in. And it sort of ties into having that type of ethos and that type of direction where everybody's on the same page, because if everybody's on the same page, you can make decisions. If somebody happens to leave or if one little cog in the machine happens to go, it still works, right? And it still makes the decisions are still consistent, I think. But any final words or anything? I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I really also as well, thank you for coming on, and maybe give yourself a bit of a plug for the Cheese Room, someone that, has been very kind to me, and I frequently am there. Maybe I would say every other Friday I'm over there chatting it up with yourself and debating the likes of Hill Messi, Steve Hitchen and the lot. But Dave Harris, thank you very much.
That's a pleasure. I mean, to my mind, and only in my mind, you're a very important part of Cheese Room history, because you were on the first ever legendary Sacred Cow, where we have to plug in that and obviously give top quality content during the summer months, where we have a Sacred Cow where one person has to argue in favor of a certain player or owner or whatever, and someone has to argue against him for 2 minutes, and then you decide in the panel. Where we've been commissioned for series 2, you'll be pleased to hear, Jack. So we'll be back this summer. We're drawing up the list as we speak. I think Flappy Hands from Denmark's on there. And the Cheese Room, so the Cheese Room shows are on, we do a show on Monday night UK time, Friday night UK time, so obviously the preview and the review of the games. And also we've got the pods as well, which we do previews and reviews. And like, the ethos is it. We started off by a guy called Aaron Jolly, who's based in Sydney. So it's like we've literally do cover off all pretty much all continents. And not just saying it, but yourself and Irish, you make really contributions when you come on, and really, really good debate and discussions, and we appreciate that as well. So it's lovely being on here. I hope as we get to the end of it, we haven't got too depressed, but who knows with our club that we love.
It's always therapeutic in some sense or some manner, but everybody, it will be pinned in the comments, so please check them out if you haven't already, if you haven't heard of them. And also, if you want to check out a Friday show with myself or Davo, you will find me over there for that, and also with all the other various content they have over there. And also as well, maybe tier 1 sources, it seems like, are coming out from the caller recently, so you can get that as well. He's an ITK. But we'll leave it there, everybody. Hit that like button, please, on your way out. Keep getting your comments in down below on any sort of thoughts, any sort of points that maybe you disagreed with, agreed with, whatever it may be. Feel free to tag it down below. We'll get your responses in. But as always, come on, you Spurs, and we will.
Come on, you Spurs.
Seeing ya. Bye, everybody.